What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fieldcraft Survival channel. I'm Jimmy Fenner with Overland Training. Today we're out on the trail in northern Arizona. We want to go over some driving techniques. We're going to go over driver positioning. We'll go over gas brake modulation. We'll go over some other techniques that you can employ while on the trail when you're driving. But one of the key things to remember is the key interface between your trail and your driving is your tires. So we're also going to go over the importance of knowing your tire pressure and setting your tire pressure according to the terrain you're going to go over. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is driver positioning. When I drive around on the street, I'm usually more concerned with being comfortable than being high speed or anything in my driving techniques. But when we're on the trail, we want to use a few techniques that can actually enhance our ability to control the vehicle. The first thing I'll do is raise the seat up. So I'll bring it up to get as high as I can safely sit in the seat so that I can see as much of the trail as possible. The next thing I'll do is bring my steering wheel up so that my hands are in a natural, comfortable position. And I'll make sure that I'm close enough that I can easily reach the pedals with my feet, but that I'm not so close that I'm cramped. So once I've found my positioning of where I want to be, the next thing I'll think about is how I use my hands to control the steering wheel. A lot of us get in a habit of driving with one hand or driving with two hands and just kind of doing our thing. We're more concerned about steering the vehicle than we are what our hands are doing. There's a technique called shuffle steering that we can use that will actually enhance our ability to control the vehicle. And by saying that, I mean you're always going to have a hand on the steering wheel at all times when you're shuffle steering. I'll show you how shuffle steering looks. It's basically where when you turn the wheel, you allow your hands to slide along the wheel and you keep one hand in contact at all times. You don't cross your hands over like you would do in like high-speed rally car racing. We try to keep our hands separate and always in contact. The next thing I think about is what I can see on the trail from my driver's seat. Like I said, we put our seat up as high as possible to see as much of the trail as possible. What I do in any vehicle that I'm going to take off-road, I'll take a minute to look at reference points on the front of the vehicle through the windshield that I can align with the tires. So in this particular vehicle, in my Jeep, I can see the hood latch on each side of my hood, and I know that that is going to ride the inside of each of my tires. So by knowing that, I can basically have an idea of where my tires are on the trail, and I can start to actually aim my tires for rocks or for terrain or avoid terrain based on where I already know the tires are. That will come with some time, but when you first look at a vehicle, you can kind of get a rough estimate of where those reference points are. After I've gotten my vision down, I've gotten my hand control down, I'm then going to go to pedal control and using your feet while driving. Most of us were trained to drive with one foot, which is safer on the road, and that's a good technique to use, where you use your right foot to use the gas and brake. When you're driving off-road, you can actually use a technique called gas brake modulation, where you drive with 2 feet, both of your feet. You put your left foot on the brake, you put your right foot on the gas. I usually put my heels together and I'll ride my right foot on the firewall, kind of on the carpet or whatever material you have on your floorboard. I'll ride my heel there and allow my heel to basically be able to pivot on that firewall to give me some friction and some control. If my foot's just floating out over the pedal, you can hit bumps on the trail that actually make you kind of unintentionally give more gas or more brake. So I'll anchor my feet down, anchor that gas foot, my right foot down on the firewall, and then my left foot will just hover over the brake. While I'm driving, by having both feet on the pedals, I can actually in some situations drag my brake. And what that is going to do is it actually kind of sucks down the suspension, it preloads it, and you'd be surprised how smooth your ride will increase. The smoothness of your ride can increase, and you can go down the trail that would normally be really bumpy, and it'll actually feel a lot smoother, and it'll increase your traction. You got to be careful when you're doing this because obviously your brakes can heat up, and if you have an automatic vehicle, your torque converter can heat up, your transmission can heat up by using this technique heavily or using it too much for too long. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, when you have a stick shift vehicle, it's going to be different because you're going to be using your clutch to get it in gear, but you can still then switch over to the brake. It's a little more to do, but you can still use the gas brake modulation technique. Tire pressure can greatly increase the performance of your tire. Once you've decided what type of tire you want to run on your vehicle, you can look up through that manufacturer and also through online forums what people recommend running your tire pressure at on the road. There's a lot of different factors and opinions that go into that. But once you've figured out what your tire pressure is going to be on the road, we have a rule of thumb where you remove 40% of that tire pressure and you'll get to what is your starting pressure for the trail. To give you an example, I run about 32 to 34 PSI on my 37-inch tires. When I go on the trail, I lower it to 60% of that. I remove 40%, so that's basically about 18 PSI for this tire. Oftentimes I'll get asked, when do I decide to stop and air down? There's kind of two answers to that question. One, if I'm in a group, I'll stop at a trailhead or a good staging area where we can all pull off the trail, kind of hang out, talk about what we're going to do while our tires are airing down. The second part of that answer is if I'm by myself and driving down the trail, sometimes I'll just blaze on down the trail. But when I get to a point where I'm having to spend considerable amount of time thinking about my line choice and thinking about where I'm going on the trail to avoid or go over certain terrain, that's a good point to stop and air down my tires. I always like to go with the rule of thumb to proactively air down and prepare for a situation where you're losing traction versus getting to a point where you're significantly losing traction and maybe getting stuck, and then you have to go backwards and air down to get unstuck. It's always better to be proactive, plan ahead, air down ahead of time, and then you're going to enjoy your time on the trail. So a key thing to understand when it comes to using good driving techniques, setting your tire pressure at a good pressure, and knowing what you're doing on the trail, it'll actually reduce the amount of stress and fatigue that you experience as a driver, and it'll allow you to go on longer trips and enjoy your trip more because you won't be so stressed out and you won't be so worn out from just driving on the trail. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned to the Fieldcraft Survival channel for more overlanding training content. Mike Hernandez and I will be going over in more detail some of the things we've already talked about and some future things that we want to talk about. There's so much to talk about when it comes to off-roading, overlanding, adventure travel with your vehicle. We hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at Fieldcraft Mobility and at JT Fenner. For more information, please check into fieldcraftsurvival.com, overlandtraining.com, and we hope to continue to give you guys good training, good information so that you can plan and prepare for your next adventure.